Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Rosen Rubini podcast, Making Sense of This World. My name is Manas Chawla, and as always, I'm pleased to be joined by CEO and Head of Research, Brunello Rosa. Lots going on, but this week we're looking at the string of monetary policy meetings that just happened in the last week or so, with lots of decisions coming our way that'll have profound implications for both the economy, but also markets and geopolitics. But let's start off, Brunello, talking about the IMF, because we got an interesting January update. Could you tell me a bit more about what was in that and your take on it?
Yeah, absolutely. The IMF released the general update of its October forecast, titled Inflation Peaking Amid No Growth. Effectively, they kind of certified that growth is slowing down, inflation remain elevated, so kind of the stagflationary scenario that we have talked about many times. But at the same time, they are also saying that inflation seems having peaked in the key jurisdictions, the US, the Eurozone, even in the UK, if a little bit less so than in other countries and jurisdictions. Um, Meanwhile, growth has been less affected by the combined effect of the war in Ukraine and the increase in gas, electricity, and energy prices in general than previously anticipated. So um, growth has been revised upwards for the global economy and some key jurisdictions there. And as a result, we believe central banks have started to act on these revised forecasts.
I see. And I mean, let's talk about the first central bank to come out with the outcome of its policy meetings was the Bank of Canada. What did they decide?
So the Bank of Canada have decided effectively to pause its tightening cycle after increasing rates by 25 basis points uh, to 4.5%. And it was actually the first central bank that formally announced a pause to evaluate the effects of the cumulative rate increase made in the last few months. This was kind of the canary in the coal mine for all other central banks that in the following week came out with positions that the market interpreted not dissimilar to this one.
I see. And if we look over in the US, Chair Powell, his remarks are always, judged very particularly, and he had some hawkish tones, I believe. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so the Fed increases uh, target range by 25 basis point as expected to 4.5 to 4.75%. And that was accompanied also by a relatively hawkish um, press conference by Jay Powell, in which he said that there is still a long way to go for inflation to come down, that the disinflation period has just started, that the Fed has still this job to complete, that we cannot finish um, its tightening cycle too soon, not to repeat the mistakes of the 70s when Fed raised too soon and then to start again. So it was a generally hawkish undertone because what? He also said that there would be two more hikes of the same magnitude, 25 basis points, one in March, one in May, and kind of investors kind of read as this was, another couple of increases, and that's it. So the pause will eventually come as for the Bank of Canada, as we said before, and that really provided some form of relief to markets that, in fact, in spite of the hawkish tone by the press conference, rallied on the news.
Hmm. And if we look across the pond, seems like there's a bit of a similar fate as well for the European Central Bank. Is that right?
Absolutely, the ECB increased interest rates by 50 basis points as expected, um, and gave more details about this QT program. even announced in another rate increase by 50 basis points in March. Conference conference was also relatively hawkish by Lagarde, but again, the market read it as okay, we do this 50 now in February, 50 in March, and more or less that's it, because the ECB itself says that they will evaluate the subsequent path of its monetary policies, such as it's not decided that whether there would be more hikes or not. Perhaps there might be more, but smaller. In any case, again, it sounded like the end of the tightening cycle in light of the peaking inflation and growth being revised upwards.
I see. And the Bank of England, is there another bank that, it follows a policy similar to?
Absolutely, 50 basis point increase. In this case, they were more explicit about the potential pause, a bit like, not as much as the Bank of Canada, but a bit more like them. In the sense they say, okay, we do this 50 basis point now, and then we will see whether further increases are needed. Something like, okay, we might have long enough, especially in light of the fact that the IMF forecast see the UK is the only country in a recession in 2023, even worse than Russia, if it's even possible. And therefore, the Bank of England may not need to increase rates as much as previously thought. So all these central banks seems to have reached the conclusion that lots have been done, a phase in which they need to evaluate the cumulative effect of what they've done is about to begin. And therefore, even if there are rate hikes down the line to be made, investors are perceiving that the end of the tightening cycle is in sight. And for this reason, markets have rallied.
Right. I mean, yeah, it wasn't too long ago, just, sort of a couple of months ago, were the proclamations of an impending recession in most of the Western world. It seems like away from the sort of gloomy projections, we're actually finding a sign of relief. So let's hope nothing intervenes in that far too soon. So it's something we'll continue to watch closely and cautiously, but also optimistically. As always, Brunello, thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you very much. Till next time.